Welcome to Cultures Magazine. I'm your host, Antoinette Lee, joining you from the ancestral lands of the Oyate, Shakaway, and Menominee peoples in the Northwoods of the United States on modern maps.
I'm Ashley Drake. Along with my husband, Kyle Drake, I'm one of the owners of Arrowhead River Adventures. We're based in Southern Oregon, Grants Pass specifically. And we run day trips on the Rogue River and multi-day adventures on the Rogue, the John Day, and the Deschutes rivers.
My name is Robert Kenta. I'm an enrolled member of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians in Western Oregon. And my tribal ancestry is from the Rogue River and Upper Klamath River regions, Shasta and Applegate River Athabascan. And I just retired from nearly 30 years working for my tribe in cultural resource protection. Took a year off from tribal council, serving 18 years. And just got reelected to Siletz Tribal Council in February.
Hi, my name is Erica Nelson. My pronouns are she and her. I'm currently located on Ute territory, currently known as Crested Butte, Colorado. I'm also an enrolled tribal member of the Diné tribe, also known as Navajo. I am a consultant and co-founder of Real Consulting, along with my business partner, Sydney Clark Whittington. REAL is an acronym for Reconcile, Evolve, Advance, and Lead. I'm also a fly fishing guide and a whitewater guide instructor, and I host a podcast called the Awkward Angler Podcast.
Thank you for that, and thank you for joining me. Visitors come from all over the world to experience the beauty of the Rogue River in Oregon, a state in the Pacific Northwest region of the United States. Modern books and maps of the river and the surrounding lands document its history through the lens of what Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate professor at the University of Alberta, Dr. Kim TallBear, calls settler culture. A Rogue River outfitter set out to help inform visitors of the complex history of the Rogue River and its surrounding land and peoples, and I'm joined by guests today to tell that story. Ashley, how did your company Arrowhead Adventures get its name?
Well, that's kind of a funny story. We actually inherited the name. So my husband, Kyle, and I took over ownership of Arrowhead in 2021, but the business had been around for about 30 years before that. And the previous owner, legend has it, found an arrowhead on the banks of the Rogue River, and that was inspiration for the name. When we took over ownership, I will share that one of the things we thought about was if having a name and iconography that has an association with Indigenous culture, if that was appropriate for us, because we are not Indigenous and didn't want to be insensitive or inappropriately using something that is not part of our culture. And we actually chatted with Erica and her partner, Sydney, just to see, like, where do we stand in this? What's best for their community? What's best for us? Is this okay, really? And where we landed is that it's okay. We're going to stick with the name. And for us, it's really symbolic of looking forward. The arrowhead is the beginning. It's the point. And for us, it's exciting to think about looking towards the future, but also really honoring the past and keeping in mind the people that were there before us.
That's beautiful. So what's the purpose of the Decolonizing the Rogue River Jedi workshop? Who does it serve? Why was the program created? Where did the participants come from? What do they learn from the program? And how many people have you hosted to date?
Well, the Decolonizing the Rogue River program is sort of the brainchild of both my husband and I and Erica and her partner, Sydney. When we first talked about it, it was in 2020, I believe. And we were thinking there's this real hunger for more diversity, equity, and inclusion training. There's a real hunger for leadership training. And we all come from an outdoor education background, and we know the power of immersive experiential education in a wilderness classroom. And Kyle and I thought the Rogue River has this incredibly rich history. What better place to host a workshop like this? So that's sort of where it originated. And our goal is to really give like a holistic picture of the Rogue River to our guests, because a lot of the storytelling and interpretation that that folks get when they come to this area is very settler focused. And Erica can speak a lot more to that, and Robert as well. But I can say from my perspective as an outfitter, we really felt a duty to want to share more than the traditional story of this area. And so we wanted to partner with experts who could share that and know that our role was to create a really fantastic river classroom to facilitate that experience for our clients. So you asked, who does it serve? I think, first and foremost, it serves our participants, people who are excited for this learning. They sign up, they get out there, they get vulnerable. And I think tangentially, it also does serve the greater community. We've had so much encouragement and support from other outfitters, from guides, river guides who want to work with us on this specific program. We've had a lot of just like enthusiasm from even just like local tourism agencies and other small businesses. People who think, I didn't know you could do that. Nobody else is doing this. And it's pretty cool that you guys are trying it out. So yeah, just a really positive affirmation. And along with that, we really do hope that we're shining a light on the part of the history of this area that has been overlooked and giving some more exposure to the local Indigenous populations that have been displaced.
Erica, what is a justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, or JEDI workshop? How does it look when it takes place on a river?
Sure. Yeah, I think JEDI workshops come in many different formats. I think we've been seeing an increase, especially since the murder of George Floyd, seeing these increasing. And Sydney and I were already immersed in the work, launching Real Consulting in 2018. And we met also at NOLS, the National Outdoor Leadership School. And as Ashley mentioned, it's an experiential education, immersive experience when you go on these trips and these courses. Sydney, at the time when we both worked at NOLS, I was the marketing manager and Sydney was the diversity and inclusion manager. We saw it really necessary to partner when it came to inclusive marketing, course creation, and building community partnerships. And so it was kind of a no-brainer when Kyle and Ashley became co-owners of Arrowhead Adventures, because they also had that same experiential education background when we all met at NOLS. So as Ashley mentioned, it teaches leadership development in an outdoor setting, doing long expeditions like whitewater rafting, rock climbing, backpacking, etc. So I think one thing that's always kind of struck to me was diversity, equity, and inclusion and justice is a basic leadership skill. And I've noticed, especially around 2020, we've seen many reactions to JEDI workshops, JEDI work. We're still seeing it as seen as political or divisive. But, we've always thought that we need to include a good leader would actually want to have this culture of inclusion and diversity. And so how do we make these workshops more attainable and approachable? And also looking at just my own background of instructing and guiding for over 10 years, I've always been a little frustrated at the way that curriculum is built. It seems that history always starts at 1800, and that's and zero nods to Indigenous cultures that have been stewarding our lands and our waters for a long time, so since time immemorial. And so I've always wanted to see these two connect. And I will also preface that this course that we've all partnered and developed and co-created is not specifically just for the Rogue River. We're very fortunate to have Robert on this trip, who's very familiar as his tribe is from this area, as well as a tribal elder that also facilitates history of that area too. So our course is really kind of broken down into 3 different parts, and then looking at what does it look like to decolonize our worldview, our perspectives. And so it's kind of this 3-part series that we walk people through, which is the self-identity course, recognizing our own self-awareness, our access to resources, our own privilege. Why do we have the worldviews that we do? How did we get access to outdoor recreation, and how come other people don't? then it's also kind of leading into how do we build authentic community and partnerships. And then lastly, taking those two skills, we look at creating action, and that's when the decolonization work can start to happen. And so without those two critical parts, a lot of folks just want to jump to action right away. I'm a great person. I don't need training or whatnot, but we really find those two really important. And so we've kind of mirrored our curriculum into those three steps. So we're doing some lessons in the morning, especially while the guides are cleaning after breakfast, packing the boats. That gives us a lot of time to workshop and do interactive discussions, having on-boat reflection, but also balancing the fun, right? Because it's a beautiful area and this is a fun activity. So we want to keep it fun and engaging for everyone, no matter where they're at in their journey with working with Jedi. And then lunchtime, we'll probably have like a brief chat. And then the dinner is kind of like a debrief and a lesson plan, but that's also interactive too. So it's a nice balance of doing the workshop in the outdoors. And there's no better way than to actually be in the nature and have the discussion once you're going into the wild and scenic. Why is it wild and scenic? Let's talk about land ownership. Let's talk about borders and, the national parks. How does that serve us, or how doesn't it serve certain populations? And so really just kind of opening up the space to have these discussions and new learnings for folks while they're on the Rogue River.
So Erica, it sounds like your content can really be taken to any river. So any outfitter who wants to have a program similar to this on their home river could bring you and your team out and run a similar program. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's really important to also partner with folks that are familiar with this area, have stewarded this land or have ancestors in that area too. So really fortunate to get to go on their first trip with Robert and also hear from other folks from other tribes that have also come from this area. So that is really important. And I think the best part is we're able to focus on curriculum while being guided and outfitted by Arrowhead. So we have amazing food, awesome guides. The guides are also pretty well versed in their history. And again, that does start at 1800, and that's not a terrible thing. It's like yes and conversations. And it's pretty sweet to be able to focus on the curriculum and then have dessert every single night. So it's pretty sweet.
Definitely. As a person who takes a lot of raft trips, I understand that. Yeah. So Robert, you originally started the trip as a participant. With your extensive knowledge of Rogue River's history from the indigenous perspective of the Silts tribe, which I understand made you an indispensable voice on the trip, as Erica talked about, why did you want to be a participant in this workshop?
Well, I hadn't heard about the program, and somebody sent me a link to it. And so I reached out and asked some questions and wanted to make sure that they were getting their historical information from the correct places. And so then I was invited along to actually share in some of that knowledge. And much of my career working for my tribe over the 30 years, I delved deep into historical research and cultural research. Had grown up here in my tribal community and knew a lot of those things from family stories and just kind of oral history within the community, but had struggled over the years to really reconcile the difference between U.S. history perspective about our people and what our own people knew and what primary source documents say that in a lot of ways needs some unraveling when you're looking at U.S. histories about tribal people and our people in particular. A lot of that is around treaty history and the purpose of treaties and whether they were fulfilled or not. And we drifted through a big section of our ancestral homelands that was ceded by ratified treaty. And as we got farther down the river, treaties were signed, but once they got us removed to the reservation, the Senate never ratified those treaties. And so we had people living here on the Siletz reservation, some of which were provided for by treaties, for this official sale of their lands, and others who had just been forcibly removed without any compensation. And so our tribal histories can be real complex within even a reservation or a confederation of tribes on a single reservation.
Thank you for that. So Ashley, from the perspective of an outfitter, and if you wouldn't mind, for the people who don't know, can you tell us what an outfitter is? What is the value of creating a program like yours?
Outfitter really is just commercially on a river or any publicly controlled space, any wilderness space, really. For this conversation, when I talk about myself as an outfitter, I mean that I am a commercial river company. So I take people down rivers and they give me money. And we have a relationship with local land managers. We have permits to be able to do that. And we have to follow pretty strict guidelines to be able to do that as well. So we feel a weight of responsibility for doing that, and for being in this role of really introducing people to wild places that maybe wouldn't go there otherwise. Maybe going out on a river and doing a rafting trip is not something that they were raised doing or something they've had exposure to and could do on their own. So we take them out and we teach them how to do it. And then sometimes they go on to buy their own raft and do trips with their own family afterward. And that feels like a success to us.
It's okay. When you talk about having permits to be able to do what you do, where do you get the permits? And, you know, I know permit processes are complex, but a little bit about what's involved with obtaining a permit.
What is involved with obtaining a permit is a lot. The first step is knowing what area you're excited to run trips on, and then contacting the local Bureau of Land Management usually is the best place to start. And just introduce yourself, say you want to run commercial river trips. What does the permitting process look like? On some rivers, you can just apply. And if you send in a good application that shows you have a business plan, you have insurance, you have good leave no trace training, you have yourself organized and you are going to be a good steward of this river and you're going to take care of your clients. If you can demonstrate that, you may be issued a permit. In other areas, the permits are really controlled and restricted and new permits are not issued. And in that case, like the Rogue River, for example, the way to get a permit is if a different outfitter is selling their business, and the permit would come along as part of that business. So that's how we obtained the road permits for Arrowhead. The previous owner was selling their business. So there were a number of permits included in that sale, but that's another way that you can obtain permits.
Thank you. So aside from contacting Erica and her company, what are 3 action steps an outfitter can take to get started today if they want to create a similar program on their home river?
I would encourage anyone to try to create a similar program. I think it is wildly valuable in the commercial outfitting industry that we spend more time focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion and leadership. Point 1. Point 2, we need to shine a light on the Indigenous history that is so often overlooked in the stories that we tell our guests. So what I would recommend is, first thing, learn a little bit of your history. Figure out who were the people that were there before you. Often we talk about the settlers, the miners, the trappers, the ranchers that were on that land, but who was there before and what happened to them? You can start with this simple land acknowledgements. When we take people on our day trips, we will often share with them that the Native American people were there for centuries before the white settlers came. And people are like, what? I thought this was just empty land. No, it was not. So just throwing out those tidbits as a starting point is a really good first step. I would say your second step is to find your experts. So we were incredibly blessed to have been networked with Robert. Robert is such a valuable resource, and he's become a champion for this program, which is really affirming to us because we didn't know how it would land with the local Indigenous community. And so, Robert, I just can't thank you enough for all of your encouragement and support. And then you find your folks like Erica and Sydney at Real Consulting, people that you trust to run the program and share their knowledge in a way that you want to support. because doing one of these programs does take work, and you want to know that you've got really good people on your side. And then lastly, I would say find local partners. So one of the reasons that this program is successful is we partner with the Southern Oregon Land Conservancy. Southern Oregon Land Conservancy has made it part of their mission to really enhance Indigenous voices and be networked with a bunch of different groups in the state of Oregon. And through their network, they've gotten people to sign up and do the trip. So I'd say find your community, find your partners, find people that can really be your champions to make your program a success.
Robert, is there anything you want to add that you would advise a company who might want to set up a program like this?
Oh, there's a lot to all of that. Often there's multiple tribal governments and sometimes unrecognized tribal communities that don't have status as a federally recognized tribe or even a state recognition. So there's a lot of homework to be done in making sure you're talking to the right people. And like in our case with the Rogue River country, our tribe and the Confederated Tribes of Grand Round got permission from Congress. You had to have a jurisdictional act passed to be able to sue the United States as a tribe. And so we were successful in that in the 1930s, filed our claims cases for all the treaty and non-treaty historical legal claims. And then the federal court sorted out which contemporary tribal government at the time had the legal and political successorship to those different tribes and bands. And so the federal court rightly found in the 40s and 50s that the Siletz tribe had the right to represent the three treaties that were ratified in the Rogue River country, and then also the lower Rogue unratified treaty area. So just knowing, being sure that you're talking to the right people and getting the right perspectives in your work takes a little homework, and recognizing that there are kind of I'd say almost diametrically opposed versions of history. Like I mentioned earlier, US history about tribes and how they ended up on reservations and what happened even to those people on those reservations and the reservation lands themselves. Like our reservation was carved up very quickly, even though it was promised as a permanent reservation, most of it taken from us without any compensation. So there's tough pieces of our history that need to be shared in these spaces, and people need to kind of prepare themselves to hear that. Early in my working for the tribe, I was a fairly, quiet, shy person, and then asked to go to talk to schools and universities and large seminar type presentations about our history. And if I allowed myself to show any emotion, like my voice cracked through getting emotional talking about a certain part of our history, I could see the audience shut down. And so I would prepare people often when I was giving a heavier subject presentation, just to make sure that they kind of steeled themselves, girded their loins, or whatever you want to call it, to have that tough conversation and be able to experience it, let that information in, not put up barriers.
I would add too, Kyle, my husband, and I, we're still learning. We have so much more to learn, and both about diversity and equity and inclusion, about the history of this area. And I would say to other outfitters or people wanting to get involved in this kind of program, it can seem sort of daunting. Like running a business is a lot already, and it can feel like a lot to take on, and you don't want to make mistakes. So I know that I have felt that pressure, and that is why I'm grateful that I'm working with Erica and Robert as experts, because I can put on a great rafting trip and I can create space for our guests to have this experience. And I want to know some of what we're talking about, but I don't need to be the expert. I can refer people to Robert because he should be the one sharing this history, not me. And I can refer people to Erica because she is the expert facilitator in what she does, and she should do that, not me. So I think that's where those partnerships and the trust between us is super important to the success of this sort of program.
Thank you. Erica, is there anything you'd like to add in terms of what advice you might give a company that wants to set up a program like this?
Yeah, I think Robert did echo everything Robert had mentioned, but also, and Ashley, just to add on more of things that I deal with in the work that I do, I notice a lot of folks are hesitant to try anything because they're afraid of making mistakes. And so I'm glad that Ashley, you chimed in on that, because that was kind of ringing in my head of this wasn't a perfectly planned trip in the beginning. We all fumbled and we all made mistakes in, Ashley and I, and also Sydney and Kyle, putting this together, there was things that we all missed, and I think that's kind of how Robert came in and luckily was gracious enough to accept our apologies and be able to build community. And I think that's the beauty of when you own your mistakes and understand that this is an iterative, adaptive process, and not just going to be linear all the time. It's either yes or no. Like, we need to kind of reframe our perspective in what it looks like to build true, authentic community. And part of that is being really uncomfortable and knowing that you're going to make mistakes. And we like to say that true diversity work is in the recovery. So are you able to really get back in the game and continue to try?
Erica, if someone wants to get in contact with you to engage with your company for your services, to create a Jedi program on their home river, how do they reach you?
Sure. Our website is consultreal.org. And then I'm also available on my Instagram account at Awkward Angler as well.
If a person is listening to this or reading the article and they want to participate in your Jedi workshop, how do they connect with Arrowhead Adventures?
And the best first step is to visit our website, arrowheadriveradventures.com. From there, you can always send us an email, hello@arrowheadadventures.com, and you can give us a call. We love to chat. We know people probably have a lot of questions. There are no stupid questions. And you don't need any experience to do this kind of trip. You don't need to have been rafting before. You don't need to have done this workshop before. Everybody is welcome.
If you want to see beautiful photos of the Rogue River and the participants' experiences, be sure to pick up a copy of Cultures magazine on newsstands, airports, and bookstores. In June, you can read the article, view the photos, and additional photos online at culturesmag.com, coming soon. Until next time, see you on the river, in the backcountry, or the horse barn. I'm your host, Antoinette Lee, for Cultures Magazine.